All right, welcome back to another Wednesday edition of the JerzWay PGA DFS show. Appreciate Jerz, but very appreciative of having my good buddy Jason Sullivan. You see him on the Fairway to Heaven. He does a wonderful write-up on FanShare for kind of a course report. Jason, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of your shows. So it's good to be back on and talking with you for sure.
Yeah, and I really love your insight. Again, I was on with Phil last night, and we kind of missed you. You kind of add so much, and Phil was singing your praises. So, but very excited to get you with tonight. So let's just jump right in. We've had a couple withdrews we were talking about, a couple WDs, but overall thoughts Wednesday night, the night before the event starts. Well, yeah, what are you thinking, and how are you attacking this week?
So we were kind of talking a little bit off the air, just surprising ownership numbers on a few guys. I know Jordan Spieth is one guy that we both really like this week. And just to see his number, FanShare has him at 10-6 right now, which is shocking to me after how well he played last week. And he's done well here in the past too. So it's interesting. There's some numbers that I expected. You expect Rahm and, Scotty and JT to be up pretty high. But there were some guys that were a lot lower than I thought they would be. So that was interesting. What were your thoughts on the ownership?
Yeah, the same thing, and we'll pull the ownership up here in a second. But yeah, there's a lot of surprises this week with ownership, and I've learned that I have questioned Mike in the past with his ownership numbers, but they're usually hold. And so there's a few surprises. A little bummed with the Webb withdrew. I kind of wrote him up. I think it was on Rotoballer about how he was a great pivot. I just didn't like Webb. Webb usually consistent at this event and events such as the Sony and things like that, but Webb's very consistent on approach, but he's actually lost 5 of his last 11. So, he's not the same Webb, at least right now. So I thought he'd be a great fade. And so I'm bummed that now ownership will scatter off him because of the withdrew. And then we get Harris English, kind of something similar, bad form. Wasn't going to garner tons of ownership, but still another name in there. And so let me ask you this. Do you think you're going about a stars and scrubs approach because we have a Rahm and JT up top? Or are you kind of maybe fading them and doing more of a balance build?
So I've been kind of going back and forth in my head about this. I think I'm going to do a little bit more of a balance build just because I like the 9K range a ton. And then I might it's kind of weird though. I might try to get 3 9K guys in my lineup if at all possible. I really like that range a lot. I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be a little bit under-owned for what they've done. I think Xander's one of them. I think Spieth is another one of them. So I want to get at least those 2 guys in a lot of my lineups for sure. And I'm kind of doing the same thing that you're doing this week. I'm kind of condensing my player pool, and I only have like 10 or 12 guys in my player pool right now, and a lot of them happen to be lower-end guys, 6K guys and low 7K guys. So I think just by nature, I'm going to go a little more stars and scrubs, but not your typical all the way up stars. I mean, I will sprinkle in a little bit of them because I can't not, but sure. I think I'm going to focus a lot on the 9K range.
Yeah, well, super well said. And I agree. And just like I kind of mentioned last week it was going to be kind of a dumpster fire, and 6-6 cut percentage was going to be low, and it was under 2%. I think it's going to be very different this week. I think 6-6 will be higher, and I think we'll see more chalk in GPP winning lineups. So with that said, I might have 2 or 3 guys that are highly owned in a lineup, but I might make my lineups leave more salary on the table this week than last week. Last week, very little because the lineups were contrarian based on ownerships in general. But I think it's a little bit more chalky this week, which then makes me think, okay, how do I get different? But it makes it exciting. We got a great field, and this is a fun event, and it's what they do with 16 is so great. Before we kind of look at the board here, do you have any thoughts on the event, or maybe any secret knowledge, Jason, you have on what we should be kind of looking for when we're finalizing our lineups tonight?
I don't know if it's secret knowledge, but I'm just excited that the fans are back this year. I mean, it's iconic. I mean, any golf fan loves this. I've heard, a lot of people in the industry talk about how even the casual golf fans will get into this one. Probably outside of a major, this is probably my favorite event every year. I mean, I get so excited for it. Last year, they sprinkled some fans in. I think it was 5,000. But just to have the atmosphere and you see all the highlights from this. Tiger's hole in one over the years. you guys talked about on our show last night, the year that Kobe passed away, them all wearing the Kobe Bryant jerseys. Yeah. And, you get the huge ovation if you get it close. Don't hit it close, you're going to get booed. I just love this. I absolutely love this event. And I think just the day as a whole, I mean, having this event, the final round, and then lead into the Super Bowl, I mean, it's like one of the best sports days of the entire year.
Yeah, that is one of the best. I remember when I think it was Ricky and Hideki went into a playoff, and it like went up during the Super Bowl, and I was like flipping back and forth because I think I had one of them. I can't remember who, but it's so much fun. Right into that's a great point. As soon as the tournament finishes, you switch it over to Super Bowl, and they're getting ready to kick off. It's just a fun way to spend a Sunday. And it's also almost kicking off, I think, the true PGA Tour season. Yeah, the Farmers is great, but we're done with the Pro-Ams. We're done with the multi-course rotations. We're now going into Phoenix, Scottsdale. Then we go into Riviera, that is a great event. And then it's the Florida Swing. And then things pick up speed. So I love that point. Well, let's kind of dive in and kind of look at the board here, and I'll get your thoughts just initially. Let's just go from Spieth all the way up to Rahm. So that includes Hovland, Matsuyama, Cantlay, Thomas, and of course, Jon Rahm. Who are you liking, or maybe who are you not liking in this range?
It's hard to not like the first two guys. I mean, let's be honest. It's hard to pick any holes in either one of their games. Thomas is due for a win. We know that. Rahm is playing the best golf in the world right now. A really interesting one to me, and I haven't heard many people talk about him this week, is Patrick Cantlay. He seems to be the lowest owned of these guys. He hasn't been the same Cantlay as he's been in previous weeks. His approach numbers are down a little bit. I know you mentioned on our show last night that he's kind of been carrying by the putter, which is a little bit weird for a guy that isn't really known for the putter. So I think he's the most interesting in this range. I was really, really hoping that Matsuyama would be a little bit lower owned. I thought maybe he'd be a sneaky play, but obviously when he's approaching, last time I looked, about 20%. So he's not going to be too sneaky. But, I mean, you can honestly argue probably for all these guys. But I think JT's my favorite in this range, but I like Hideki a lot too.
Yeah, it's hard not to like Hideki. Yeah, you're right. Coming in at 18% owned right now. And with Hideki has 28 measured rounds at TPC Scottsdale. And he just kills it. He ranks first in the field in strokes gained total here, strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained ball striking, strokes gained approach, ranks fourth in DK points. It's really hard not to like Hideki, but Hideki's kind of volatile. And even though he does love it here, it's hard to take on any golfer's ownership when they are a little volatile. And it's hard to call Hideki volatile when he won the Sony and then won the Zozo. But we've seen him go like when he won, or he put a second at the St. Jude, miscut at the Wyndham. He won the Sony Open, but then kind of played poorly at the Farmers, even though he finished 30th. Kind of had a down Hideki week, and he was chalked that week. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with him. He just has such great strokes gained data here at Scottsdale. It's just hard not to play him. But you're going to have to make a decision on a golfer who's been very consistent right now, especially overseas, and that's Viktor Hovland. What are you doing with Viktor?
It's almost like one of those situations where I don't know how I get away from Viktor. I feel like he's obviously been so good on, like you said, overseas, but he's just a stud anyway. I mean, he's a ball striker. It seems like this is a kind of event where, short game's important here, but putting, we've seen bad putters win here. I mean, we've seen Hideki win here twice. So, I think he's a great course fit. And that's a good point, too, about Hideki, just to kind of go back to him for a minute. If you're going to be paying up to whatever, was his price, 10.5, something like that. If you're paying up to that for a guy that's going to be close to 20% ownership, you're going to want that guy to be pretty damn consistent. And you bring up the volatility, I think is a great point. Whereas I think Hovland's kind of the opposite. I mean, Hovland is kind of the same guy more often than not. I mean, we see great ball striker, short game is really bad, which he'll admit, but I feel like it's getting better. And I mean, he's proved that he has win equity. I mean, what has he won? 3 of his last 5 events or something? Like, I mean, he can win a golf tournament. So I think regardless of ownership, I feel like you gotta play him this week.
Yeah, Hovland hasn't missed. Yeah, I'll say Hovland hasn't missed a cut since the Players last year, and before that, he hadn't missed a cut since the Honda the year before. So very consistent. He's a cut maker, and he's playing some of the best in the world right now. Also, dude, in the past, I'm gonna say like 6 months, dude has gotten ripped. Dude is not skipping the gym at all. Yeah, I heard like his club head speed is up somewhere. I don't know. That probably is a Twitter thing, but I like him. But speaking of volatile golfers, we then come to Jordan Spieth coming in at 10.6% owned. I wrote it up on FanShare. If Jordan Spieth, now here's the thing. Yeah, he is extremely volatile. So if Jordan Spieth was like 18% owned, I would say the same thing I did for Matsuyama, and that's like, all right, that's probably a fade. But when he's at 10%, you're like, all right, now that's interesting. Now you have my attention. And we know the upside with Jordan. And coming into last week, he was hitting the ball some of the worst in the field, like the very, very bottom. And then he switched it around. I mean, gained 5.8 on approach last week, a surprising 7.6 tee to green last week, and on green on the greens. I'm surprised when you look at strokes gained data, it's hard to imagine why he didn't win last week. But I'm willing to bet with 10% ownership that he has found something, and he has good course history. If you remember last year, he fired that 61 on Saturday to put him in the lead, had a shot in the 70s on Sunday to kind of fall back. I think he still finished sixth. But it's hard not to like the upside of Jordan Spieth at 10%. What do you think?
It's almost the same story as last week too, right? You have all these high owned guys. I mean, high priced guys that are all highly owned too. And then Spieth just seems to kind of come in under the radar. He's not your typical, Rahm or Thomas, the guys that are always going to pop in your model. Spieth is not that really anymore because he does spray it off the tee. He's a little bit inconsistent, but I mean, this tournament kind of shows his volatility. I mean, we've seen so he was T4 last year, two missed cuts in a row, and then T9 here. So that pretty much shows exactly what you just said, that he's volatile. But I mean, it's like we know that he can contend. We know that if Jordan Spieth gets going, he's one of the best golfers in the world. So I feel like at 10%, I don't know how you don't play him. I was shocked when I saw his ownership numbers. I mean, he was in my player pool anyway, I'll be honest with you. But then when I saw his ownership yesterday for the first time, I was shocked. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so then I'm just kind of scrolling down now on FanShare where I think this is the range that if you get right, your lineups are going to be in the green. And that's from Xander all the way down to Fitzpatrick. So if you get this range right, because that includes Brooks, Burns, Berger, Scheffler, Bubba, Tony, Louis, and Fitzpatrick. If you get this range right, it's vital. And so everybody is going with Scotty. Scotty looks like to be the highest owned guy in the field right now, and rightfully so. A ton of upside. But are you taking on that 25% ownership number on Scotty Scheffler?
I don't know how you can. I mean, I know how you can. Obviously, he pops in a lot of ways. But for me, it's a no-brainer to pivot off of him. I mean, I just feel like his win equity. We haven't seen him win. So obviously, 25% ownership for a guy that we haven't seen win on the PGA Tour is interesting to me. I'm going to personally pivot off of him, and the two places I'm going to go, one of them is going to be Xander. I mean, no worse than T17 in 4 appearances here. So we know he gets it done. T2 last year. We haven't seen Xander a lot, so that's kind of like the question mark with him. But I feel like I forget exactly what his ownership was, but it was lower than I thought it would be as well. And then the other one that's interesting to me, and I kind of wanted to ask you about, is Bubba. I mean, great course history. I mean, all of his stats here pop like crazy. Maybe the best course history in the field, honestly, for a guy that hasn't won. Played really well last week too, so he's really interesting to me too, as a kind of a pivot off of Scotty. What are your thoughts on Bubba?
Yeah, so you're right about Bubba. Kind of good course history, and definitely ball striking. He's played here tons of times. He has over 50 measured rounds. He ranks second in strokes gained total here. He ranks first. He's tied with Hideki in strokes gained ball striking. He is first in strokes gained off the tee here. And he's number 1 in DK points. This is why Bubba comes in at 9K. And he's combining that with a second place finish to Harold Varner last weekend. And so maybe there's some jet lag there. But Bubba is a wild card. But at single digits in this range, it's a little enticing. But yeah, I don't know. I'll have to see kind of more about Bubba. And you ask about Xander, he's coming in at 17% right now. The big question mark is Berger. Berger has the back injury that's brought his ownership down to 14%, may even be lower than that by the time lineups come. But if Berger was healthy, he'd be a high on guy, because in the last 24 rounds, Berger ranks first on approach and second tee to green in the whole field. So he has decent course history here. So I really like Berger. The injury might be overplayed. I followed him for a little bit at Sunday at the Farmers, and he looked a little gingerly. He was kind of kneeling to get his ball marker, but he still shot, I think, a couple under that day. So I think Berger has more upside than Scotty, and he's 10% less owned than him. So he makes a great pivot. So does Burns. But Burns is picking up speed ownership-wise. So he's 15%. That was a little less earlier. So I know I'm kind of rambling now. But I do want to ask, we talked off air about Fitzpatrick, and you said you like him a lot too. Yeah, so what's drawing you to Fitzpatrick?
I mean, just his overall game. I feel like we hadn't seen him a lot. That was kind of the knock last week. I actually played quite a bit of him last week. I mean, his short game is just so solid. I don't know what his course history is here. Okay, so he hasn't played here before. I just feel like his overall game, he doesn't really have any holes in his game. And that's what entices me to him. And for some reason, I don't know if it's people just don't like him or what it is, but his ownership is always low for a guy that can contend. Now, can he win? I don't know. It kind of remains to be seen in America, but I just think his overall game and his short game, especially if it gets going on Bermuda, I could really see him contending. And I don't think he can win, like I said, but a top 10 is definitely in the cards, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And he doesn't play here very consistent. When I say here on the PGA Tour, he bounces back and forth on the Europe Tour. Like in the fall, he played Bermuda, Mayakoba. That was it. Then Big Gap, Pebble Beach. The late summer only played in the U.S. once. No, he didn't play in the U.S. once in July. Played here twice in August. So he kind of jumps around. And when you jump around, you don't get as much strokes gained data as a guy like Seamus Power. And so I think that skews things a little bit. And so when people are just looking at strokes gained data, it's hard then to really lean on Matthew Fitzpatrick. But just to tell you a little bit about him, he excels off the tee. He's usually a great a driver of the golf ball, and doesn't hit it very far, but usually finds a lot of fairways. Struggled with the pools early last week, but seemed to figure that out on Sunday. He kind of did well Sunday. But really at Pebble Beach, he gained 11.7 strokes total last week and 3 tee to green, even with his pools. But he's known as a great putter. And we have this Bermuda mix this week. Well, Fitzpatrick over the last 50 rounds ranks first in the field in strokes gained putting on Bermuda. So you want a guy that putts well. These are large greens. And so maybe scrambling not as much as an influence, maybe putting more. And so if you have the best putter on Bermuda in the field, can't hurt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was actually surprised a little bit by his off the tee number. I mean, we know him. I just kind of associate him with being his short game being good and his putter being good. But yeah, I mean, he's 10th in the field in the last 36 rounds off the tee. So that was really surprising to me. He also does really well on par fours, specifically 400 to 450 yards. I think he's 10th or 6th or something like that. 10th in the field, I believe in that too. So yeah, I like him a lot this week. I was actually hoping before Webb came out with the WD, I was kind of hoping that Webb would pick up some ownership and it would kind of be an easy pivot off of him. But it's kind of a little disheartening to see Webb WD already.
Yeah, I kind of agree that it's such a bummer. I do want to say one guy, because I'm going to talk a ton about him next week, but Adam Scott, first start here at this event, but he's from UNLV. He's used to desert golf. Should play really well here. He's coming off 2 straight top 10s, not in America, though, in like the Dubai Desert Classic and whatever they played in over there. Adam Scott, this is an okay course for him. He actually ranks 8th in Fanshare's course suitability ranking, but at Riviera is Adam Scott's course. It's an excellent course fit. He has great course history. Adam Scott next week. But let's kind of move on to the lower 8K range. So that is Adam Scott, that he starts in the mid, all the way down to, we'll go to Answer because Harris English kind of withdrew. Who are you liking in this range if you like anybody?
I don't love this range, to be honest with you. I think Answer's the most interesting to me. It seems like his game would fit here perfectly. I think if I'm not mistaken, he's only played here once, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I don't love this range, to be honest with you. I actually am probably going to avoid this range for the most part. But if I were to go in this range, I would definitely say Answer for sure. And I'm not opposed to going back to Seamus Power at 8,400. I know that he missed his cut in the only time that he played here. I just think he's a different golfer, and we've seen him do a lot of damage in weaker fields. But I mean, second in the field in birdie or better, fourth in DK points over the last 36 rounds. I mean, the stats are there. His eye test is there. I mean, obviously he has a little bit of problem when he gets in contention. He kind of chokes a little bit, but I mean, at 8,400, we don't need him to win. I mean, a top 10 more than does it. So he's interesting to me. Where are you going in this range?
I think he's now priced where he should. He's 1,000 less than he was last week, and Seamus Power is not a 9K golfer. And I'm biased because I think he's extremely overrated. Overrated in the sense of he shouldn't be in the 9K. He's a good golfer. Don't get me wrong. You know, to set the 36-hole record last week at Pebble, you got to be a good golfer. But he was just severely overpriced and overowned. Even though he was in the winning lineups last week. But poor guy, you shoot the 36-hole record there, but then you finish outside the top 5. You know, Russell Henley, if he is at 14%, he's another guy that I think is going to be in the majority of my lineups like Spieth. When ownership projections first came out, he was almost at 20. And so right now he's at 14. Yep. This is the year for Russell Henley. We saw what happened to him at the Sony, but Hideki took that from him. You know, I think, what did Russell Henley go out and shoot 4 under on the front 9 Sunday at the Sony? And he shot even par going in. But Hideki won that. So I don't think Russell Henley choked that away. But 8,200, you can't. I will not listen to an argument that Seamus Power is better than Russell Henley. Russell Henley. So I'm going to rely on Henley. I like your answer. I like your answer call though. He is interesting. I do want to speak on Taylor Gooch. His ownership has shot way up where he's almost at 18%. So earlier in the week on my Monday show, I said, man, I really like Taylor Gooch. He's kind of going under-owned. Doesn't have good course history here, but it's surprising that he doesn't have good course history because in the last 24 rounds, he ranks 10th on approach. He ranks 5th in proximity from 150 to 175, and I think 24% of approach shots come from there. And he's 11th tee to green, but I'm not going to touch him at near 20%, I don't think. But as we go down the board here, who are you looking at the 8K and below?
Well, first off, I think you got to give yourself credit on the Taylor Gooch thing because you were talking about him on Monday, and then you talked about him yesterday on our show again. That's where that bump came from. I think he was like 8 or 9% the first time I looked, and I was pumped about that. But yeah, I agree with you on that one. I don't know how you get a number. I actually like Max Homa a little bit here. I feel like we haven't seen him a ton, but I feel like his game fits nicely at this course. He's a guy with he's not consistent at all. We know that. But I mean, we've seen him contend in some pretty decent field. So I like him as a guy that can maybe contend this week. I think the most interesting one in this range, I don't know why I keep going back to him, but we've seen Ricky do a lot of good things at this course. Obviously, he's not the same Ricky anymore, but I kind of wanted to get your take on what you thought about Ricky and if he's worth playing this week at all.
Yeah, so this is where we talk about it often on the Monday show. It's like being aware of your own biases, and so I have a big bias on Ricky where you just want it so bad for him to be back, and so when that want can come into you talk yourself into it, and so maybe I'm doing that. But you're exactly right with his course history. Ranks 3rd in strokes gained total in the field at this event. Ranks 5th in DK points, but when you get in the desert, and shout out to the Mike from the Cut Line who pointed this out, it's a Bermuda surface, but it's overseeded with tons of different things. Bent, POA, everything under the sun. They just throw the kitchen sink on the greens. So these greens are unique, and Ricky ranks 3rd in strokes gained putting at this event. And he ranks 6th on approach. So if Ricky is going to be back, it's going to be this event.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we saw him kind of maybe flash a return at the CJ Cup. So I'm going to have some shares of Ricky, but it could be a bias, so maybe take it with a grain of salt. Are you going to own him?
I think I'm going to sprinkle him in a little bit too. I'm not going to play a ton of lineups this week. I'm going more with a single entry and 3 max as well. I think I'm going to sprinkle a little bit in because of what you just said. I mean, the course history is there at a place where we're saying we're valuing course history. I mean, he's got some of the best. So I like him a lot. I also really like Denny McCarthy this week. I'm just a sucker for him. I feel like every time I play him, it ends up turning out well. I mean, 12th last week, T6 at the Amex. I mean, he's playing some really good golf right now, and he putts better on Bermuda than he does at any other grass surface. So I think he's really interesting, and maybe even a little underpriced at 7,200. So I like him a lot too.
Yeah, I like that McCarthy call. He had a tough Sunday, I think, last week, and he should have performed better.
Yep.
Again, in some of those courses, we don't get strokes gain data, but I remember following McCarthy and killed it tee to green. I just had maybe trouble, getting the ball in the hole. But moving to the lower 7K range, this is where it gets interesting, where we don't, Siwoo was originally coming in at kind of the highest in this range, but that's dropped out now. Now Keith Mitchell is coming in the highest in this range. But one of my favorite pivots is to Russell Knox. So Russell Knox, I've been on the last few weeks. But it's currently projected to be in the single digits. Has a decent course history. In his last 3 starts here, he has 3 made cuts, finished 10th in 2019, but also is in pretty good form and kind of better form than his results show. So he had a top 10 at the Sony, gained 5.1 on approach, pretty good. Last week at Pebble, he gained 4.3 on approach and 4.4 strokes gained tee to green. That's good for Knox. So even though maybe some of the results won't show, he's been actually hitting the ball pretty well and at really low ownership. What's he at right now? He's at 6%. I like Russell Knox a lot. You mentioned McCarthy. Anybody else in this low 7K range that you like?
Yeah, I actually love this range a lot. Carlos Ortiz is interesting to me. He's played this event 3 times. He went T60 to a T25 to a T4. So we've seen him do better each time. He hasn't played a lot this year, so I think it's interesting. But I like him as a guy that can put up some points. But I mean, we know he's a scorer. He typically does well on easier courses, but I think he's interesting. I think the slam dunk play of the week in this range is Brendan Grace. I mean, desert course, we know he always plays well on desert courses. Ninth here in 2020 and T2 in 2019. I think he's only 5% owned right now. I think he was 5.5 last time I looked. So I love that play this week, and he's coming in super low owned, so that's right up my alley for sure. And then, one more, I know I'm kind of rambling right now, but another interesting one for me is Pep Perez. I mean, he's one of these guys that for 4 or 5 weeks, for 4 or 5 weeks of the year, he gets on fire. He does this every single year where you think like, oh, he's back, he's gonna be so good, and then he tails off for the rest of the year. But it's like a 4 or 5 week stretch where you see 3 or 4 top 10s, him contending, him kind of looking like the old Pep Perez. So he's interesting to me too. And I actually thought his ownership would be a lot higher this week. So I'm a little surprised by that.
Yeah, I played him. I like Pep Perez. Played him in Showdown round 4 last week. Played well on approach last week. But yeah, this is a Pep Perez course, decent course history. I really like that call. But I know that you kind of said you like some salary guys. Now, are some of these salary guys you like in the 6K range? Because I have a few in the 6K that I really love.
Yes, some of them are. I have 2 that I absolutely love. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, there's 2 in this range that I absolutely love. One of them was in my GPP lineup that you guys called on the Fairway to Heaven show last night. But Nate Lashley, I mean, T17 here and T3 in his last 2 appearances. He was T28 last week, so he played okay. Kind of his stats don't really pop at all, but I just feel like a guy that likes the course at low ownership at 6,700. I like him a lot. And the other one is Henrik Norlander, T22 here last year. The big thing for me is that he's 23rd in 150 to 175. So I just like him as kind of a lower owned guy that could pop a little bit. So those are probably my 2 favorites in this range. Who do you like?
So Chris, hopefully, I don't know if you just got on, but yeah, we love Russell Knox. I saw that you tweeted that a minute ago, sent that message. Yeah, we just talked about him. Big Russell Knox, Pat Perez guy. Well, I'm going to say, because I tweeted about him earlier, so I just had to pull him up to remind him what I said. But Brendan Todd I think he's at 6,900. So last 2 starts here has a in 21 and in 16. He gained 7 strokes or more on the greens. So he actually leads the field putting here at this event. which is so surprising because he has only 10 rounds, so it's kind of sample size is kind of small. But he's also gained on approach in 2 straight tournaments, highlighted by 3.8 on approach last week. So if he knows how to maneuver these greens, maybe trending with ball striking, really like Brendan Todd. But I'm going to go down because there's a few others in this range. The other is right, $100 cheaper is Zach Johnson. Zach Johnson, also good course history here, ranks 10th in the field on approach at this course, ranks 17th tee to green at this course. Kind of surprising. And Zach Johnson has been telling everybody who will listen that his game has been rounding in the form. Yeah, so I like your Lashley call, but I'm going to come down to James Hahn, who's one of my favorite salary guys. Again, good course history. We remember him last year when he was in contention and he had the cactus, butt shot. He kind of choked it away. But speaking of guys who know how to putt on this surface, James Hahn ranks 2nd in the field in putting at this event, and he has 32 measured rounds, so pretty good sample size, and actually coming in decent form. And I kind of wrote him up on FanShare that his results don't do him justice. He has 2 miscuts at the beginning of the new year, but in those miscuts, he's actually gained 2 on approach and 2.4 on approach, and then gained 2.5 tee to green and 2.9 tee to green. So his ball striking stats are actually really good for a miscut. It's kind of what the putter hasn't been very hot. So if he comes to a place that he excels at putting at, and the ball striking is there, good course history, James Hahn at near minimum price, 6,200, is one of my favorite value plays. And so if you are trying to include a Justin Thomas and a Hideki, maybe Hahn's a good, way to get some salary opened up for you.
Yeah, that's a great call too. Another interesting one, I actually just found it while you were talking, is who has really good course history. No one's going to play him this week at all. 6,300 is JT Poston. T11, T37, and T26 in 3 appearances here. So that's another interesting one. If we're talking like course history matters a lot this week, to find a guy with that good of course history, that cheap, I mean, that's something to think about for sure.
Yeah, it's rare, and that's important because on these guys in the low 6Ks, you don't need them to win if you're in especially a smaller field or your contest on like DK or something. If they make the cut and helps you get 6-6, you're sitting nice. I will just throw off Peter Minotti, pretty decent, and then I really like Nick Watney too. 6,100 if you're looking for a deep flyer, but. I feel like we recapped that pretty good and kind of excited. It's a big event. It's a fun event. I feel kind of in the plums that one of us might score big this week, and maybe it's you. You have that tight player pool. You sent me a message on Twitter saying you're very confident in your play, so you might be sitting on a big score this week.
It's kind of funny. It's like some weeks that end up being my best weeks are the weeks that I feel so nervous going into it. And then when I feel confident, I sent you a message earlier saying, like, I feel really confident. I don't know if this is good or bad. Because normally I'm like a last-minute tinkerer, but I don't know. I feel really confident this week for some reason. So
me too.
Hoping that one of us hit it big this week.
Yeah, and I agree. And maybe it's because of the leverage opportunity that I correlate with how he handicapped. I don't know. But you need to get Jordan Spieth at 10%. And you get Russell Henley. Where was he? Down to 14. I love those numbers on him. It's just, again, a bummer that Webb had to withdraw because he was coming in at almost 15% owned. But well, Jason, anything else before I let you go and we wrap up and we put this to bed?
No, I just wanted to say thanks for having me. A big thing that you and Drew do, which I really like, is you kind of broaden the game for us. Like I always was so specific on what I did each week to kind of think about what my lineup was. And now I've got you guys have really gotten me into like the game theory side of it and thinking that you're not just playing against the field, the guys, the players, you're playing against the field of everybody in the GPP too. So you guys do a great job on your show on Monday and really have kind of like opening the way I think about this. So I really appreciate what you guys do.
Oh, Jason, you're so kind. I appreciate those kind words and appreciate you. You're one of the good ones on here. And I got to share a story with you. I know on Twitter, you told me you're a Modest Yahoo fan, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So when I was out at the Farmers, he was playing at a venue in San Diego called the Belly Up, which is kind of like an iconic venue, and was going to go see him, but try to get tickets too late and wasn't able to. Kind of worked out because I was exhausted after that awesome finish at the Farmers that saw Luke List won. But it was just going to be an epic weekend awesome. If I was able to go in and see Modest Yahoo. So if you're listening right now, go check out Modest Yahoo. Check out the album live at Stubbs. The first and second one are so sick. He's a crazy guy, but it's good music. Well, Jason, gonna let you go. I appreciate you, man. You're a good person. You're good people. Good luck this weekend. Good luck to everybody, and really appreciate Jerz for what he does and allowing us to do this. So y'all have a good night, and let's cash some winning GPP lineups. What do you say?
Let's do it.